Welcome to the Vibes Podcast with your host, Snoop.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Vibes. And as you know, the tech world is full of interesting news, and this past week has been no different. So I'm going to kick off with some news about blood drawing robots that is more accurate at taking blood out of your arm than a human being. Now, they're saying that generally when you have someone take blood out of your arm, the failure rate is between 27 to 60%. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to your local doctors where they do try to take blood out of your arm and they say, oh, we haven't quite got that vein, and they have to do it again. Now, I know for one that I hate it when that happens. I've had it happen a few times, and they have to take the needle out and put it back in. And I'm gonna not lie to you, I'm not the biggest fan of having needles stuck into my arm, especially when it happens 2 or 3 times. But they have a robot that somebody's actually created. It's guided by ultrasound, and they're saying that it can draw blood and hit the vein perfectly 87% of the time. Now, this is really interesting and very exciting news in terms of being able to go in, get something done. You come out and you don't need to worry about something like a needle to go in several times in your arm to draw out blood. So really interesting to see that, robotics are being used in this space. They're using ultrasound to make sure that they hit the right sweet spot. And could this be the beginning of new ways of having injections done? Will be interesting to see, but I know that that's pretty cool news. And for some people who do have to get their bloods tested once in a while, etc., to have something a lot more accurate like that will definitely be a welcome addition. But how do you feel about having robots sticking needles into your arm? Does that scare you? Would you prefer another human being to do that? Let me know. It would be really interesting to know your thoughts. Now, as you know, the past week and this weekend as well alone, there's been some pretty gusty weather going around, and it's definitely been gusty in the UK. And British Airways has managed in the aviation world, to break the New York to London subsonic flight record. Now, originally this record was held by a Norwegian airline in 2018, where it had 5 hours and 13 minutes for that flight. Now, usually, just to put that into context, a usual flight typically takes about 6 hours and 13 minutes. However, with the strong winds and with the strong gusts that were going on, the British Airways flight was able to do that in 4 hours and 56 minutes. Now, I don't know if that was a bouncy ride in terms of turbulence and stuff like that, but really interesting to hear that with the winds that's been going on, with the weather that's been going on, that a flight that usually takes 6 hours was just under 5 hours. So, whoever was on that flight must have been happy landing early. Would have been a bumpy landing back in the UK with the weather, but that has definitely hit the aviation news as well. Now, for those of you who use Microsoft Office products on mobile phone devices, there has been some redesigns to make the tool work better, look a lot more simplistic. And Microsoft have redesigned the Office app and basically have released that recently. I've had a chance to play around with it, and it was really, really cool. It was, worked really well. It looked very clean. And I think they need to do that because there is competition coming from the Google Suites. And for those of you who may not know, the Google Suite app is definitely gaining traction worldwide. You're having young children that are using Google Suites as they go through school, through Chromebooks. But I guess one of the things that people don't seem to quite fully grasp is that even though the Chromebook generation is quite big in, let's say, the US and in Canada, for example, when you look at Europe, they tend to stay more towards Microsoft, and you don't see Google products used that much in schools. So it's going to be an interesting battle to see how it will work in the whole mobile phone space. I'm a big fan of using Office products on a phone. I've been able to work on a few things, tinker on a few files. I feel overall on a mobile phone, it's better than what Google has to offer, but I'm sure that will change over time. But if you do use the application, if you haven't updated it on your mobile phone devices, please do check it out. It is supposed to look a lot more nicer and easier to use. Now, in the world of streaming, Amazon has hired former Hulu CEO to lead the Amazon Prime Video. The individual's name is Mike Hopkins. He was also the chairman of Sony Pictures back in 2017. I think he still may be that. Now, it's an interesting move. Amazon Prime Video is beginning to get more and more really interesting videos. So if you get Netflix and Disney that have a lot of content, Prime Video tends to be a lot more selective in terms of their content that they have. I've been recently watching Star Trek Picard, which I've been loving. I think it's a great TV show. Jack Ryan has been great. You have obviously special shows from the Grand Tour that has been really interesting. The Boys was a great TV show as well. So definitely Amazon are stepping up on the TV space. I think they need to. Apple at the moment are not really creating any new content as in such. So it's going to be an interesting time. It's going to be interesting to see who really, at the end of the year, is going to take that crown of still being at the top. And right now, Netflix are untouchable. They are really good. Is anybody going to catch up to them? Is anybody going to beat them? Only time will tell. But I think Netflix still has a good handle. For me personally, the only challenge will come from Disney. But with the content that's out there, Netflix has a lot more original content. There's a lot more to choose from. So I'm interested to see what Amazon have got to do. They do have some really good shows and I would love to see more. So let's see what happens. Another welcome global rollout is Spotify have now released Spotify Kids app, which is coming to the premium family subscription. For all of you out there that have children and you've got children with tablets, etc., I know that a lot of parents are a fan of having YouTube Kids, where YouTube is tailored for younger children and younger audiences so they don't end up playing content that they shouldn't do. The same thing is now happening with Spotify, and I think this is really a welcome move. I think a lot of parents will be happy with that. There's a lot of songs that do have parental guidance, but because there isn't quite that lock to prevent that from happening. So if you are a parent, if you are worried about the music that children are listening to because of their age and they're quite young, Spotify have released this Spotify Kids app. So please do check it out. I believe the UK and Australia had the release of that application before anybody else. And Spotify is definitely getting there. They released a standalone kids app back in Ireland in October 2019, and I think that did well, and they've just rolled it out. So it's great to see that stuff and application are being made to ensure the safety of children and to ensure that they're not listening or watching things that they shouldn't do. So definitely one for the parents out there to watch out for. In the US, T-Mobile and Sprint merger has been approved by the federal judge. You've got two major cell phone organizations that are joining forces. It's a $26.5 billion merger, which is a huge merger overall. And it allows them to work as one and to deploy 5G services to 97% of Americans within the next 2 to 3 years. So definitely there's a massive push that's going out there. To see these companies merge with one another is interesting. We had a similar merger in the UK when it was T-Mobile and Orange, who are now known as EE. They have definitely paved the way in terms of cellular data, speeds, etc. in the UK. We might see something similar in the US where it will really bump up those services. So if you are in the US, if you're listening to this podcast, if you are on T-Mobile and Sprint, what are your gripes with them? Do you get a good level of service? Please do reach out. Please do let me know. But it will be interesting to see how this merger will be, what it will bring. Will it bring some really cool stuff for the consumers in terms of prices and plans? Only time will tell, but we'll definitely keep a close eye on that one, and we'll keep you posted on what is happening in that news. Now, if you have a Nest, which I do, I have a Nest thermostat at home, I have a Nest camera, all Nest accounts will now require extra sign-in security starting from this spring. So if you have a Nest that doesn't do multi-factor authentication, you will be forced to do so. Now, there was a move to get Nest accounts to be tied to Google accounts. So if you have a Google account that doesn't have multi-factor authentication, that will have to go through that. Now, a lot of people may find it annoying that after you put in a password, you have to validate if it's you or if it isn't you. I think security should be on the forefront of everybody's mind. Everybody should understand that the information that we now hold in emails, informations that we store online, are actually quite sensitive, and we should treat it in such a nature. So, if you haven't got multi-factor turned on, please do look into getting it done, because it's only to secure your data. It's to secure that nothing happens with your information. And Nest are taking that approach to make sure that anything that's got to do with home automation is locked down. So, please do that. But interesting to see that that's happening. Now to some gaming news. Nintendo are going to be hosting some Switch pop-up lounges in 4 US airports. And what will happen is within these 4 US airports, I'm not too sure what airports that they have chosen as of yet, but I think they're saying that it might be Tacoma International Airport might be one, Chicago might be one, Dallas might be another one. But the whole idea is you'll have an area where they have Nintendo Switches, and as a passenger you can play Mario Kart against other people, just kind of relax, unwind, play some games. There'll be some connectivity to ensure that everybody plays together. Really interesting to see that happen. I'm really interested to see that in person at some point, and it will be interesting to see what the uptake of that will be. I can imagine a lot of kids gravitating to it, but will adults be gravitated to be in this Nintendo lounge to play with other adults? It's going to be interesting, but I think it's going to be coming out in around March, April time. But please do check it out. See what happens if you do manage to go to see one in the lounge. Please do keep me updated. But I would love to see it in person, and maybe I might do at some point. Now, Microsoft, as you know, had the Surface Duo and the Surface Neo. The Duo was the phone, and they released a developer app. Microsoft has now got the Neo, and they've now released a developmental SDK where it will allow people to play with the new Windows 10X. And Microsoft described Windows 10X as an expression of Windows 10. And basically what they're saying is it's a full-blown Windows 10, but reimagined in terms of how you interact with icons, how you interact with the dual screen. It's going to be really, really interesting to see how it works. We know that the Surface Neo is going to have it. The Lenovo ThinkPad X1 Fold will have the 10X. Dell, HP, and Asus are other companies that are looking to make folding or dual screen laptops. It's going to be interesting to see how they change the interface. Interface is really important. UI is very important. And I think this is one of the reasons why Windows 8 failed, is because nobody liked the user interface, and people were so used to the user interface of Windows from Windows 7 that Windows 10 went back a step on how you would interact. So I know there were a lot of people that were worried moving from Windows 7 to Windows 10, thinking it was a massive change. And the people that I've spoken to that have moved to Windows 10 recently have all given quite surprising feedback to say that they quite liked it. It wasn't as different as they thought there was. A few things that they had to learn, but if Microsoft can ensure that the user interaction is great, then that would be amazing to see. Now, for all you Drake fans out there, Drake is a gamer. He loves to play video games, and there were times where he would stream his video gaming on Twitch. But now there's news coming out that Drake is looking to stream exclusively on Caffeine. It's a new streaming format. On that, he's going to host rap battles. He's going to find new emerging talent. It's really interesting to see that the streaming industry, in terms of people watching other people game or do stuff, is really being blown apart. YouTube is no longer the go-to place. Twitch is no longer the go-to place. They dominated that area. And to see other rivals coming in and do more, Microsoft Mix is one of them. We've got Caffeine, which is another one. Really interesting to see that space. There's definitely competition heating up. Now, does Drake streaming make a massive difference to Caffeine? Will it get more people to jump to this streaming platform? Only time will tell. But, interesting to see a big artist doing that. Now, we're going to go to the big news that happened this week. And I said I would do a podcast on it. Never really had time, but we're going to talk about the Samsung event. And what Samsung had unveiled was the Samsung Galaxy S20. That was leaked a long time ago in terms of how it looked like. And obviously the Samsung Galaxy Fold Z. What's really interesting to hear is the Samsung Galaxy Fold Z is a better phone than the Motorola Razr. So if you're looking for a flipping phone, you probably want to go for the Samsung Galaxy Fold Z. The big thing about that news, though, is Samsung have managed to find a way to bend thin glass. So that's a big change, a welcome change for durability. And then obviously with the Samsung Galaxy S20, they really focused on the phone's camera. And this goes back to other conversations and other podcasts where, the discussion about phone cameras being the one thing that people really want to go for. So you'll have a phone camera that will take loads of detail. You can take 8K video at 24 frames per second. I think this whole thing about cameras being really blown out of proportion, but that was the focus. The focus for Samsung was all about cameras, video, and they spoke about the phone, the UI being simpler, but they really skimmed that. It was all really about, here's our brand new phone, here's an epic camera. Obviously it needs to be reviewed to see how good the S20 is, and overall I think the iPhone 11 does a great job. I think the Google Pixel does a great job of camera. Does taking a higher megapixel camera mean better pictures? The truth is no, that's not the case. Now Samsung was really trying to show off in terms of their camera and zooming in, and they'd be like, wow, you could zoom in this area, it'll be just as clear. You can zoom into here, it'll be just as clear. I'm going to be honest with you, whenever I've taken a picture, I've never really zoomed into another area and be like, do you know what, I like that area better than the other picture that I've taken. I've never done that. There might be people out there that do, and if you do, please do let me know. Please do reach out and tell me that you do crop pictures, and does zooming into another area, being able to get another picture from that, is it attractive to you? Is it something that you're going to use? I feel it's a little bit gimmicky. I think camera tech is getting better and better over time. I think obviously video quality is getting better and better over time. But again, I have this argument about 8K versus 4K. We still don't have enough 4K content, and we're already talking about 8K content. So I don't know. I think we're kind of jumping the gun when it comes to that. I think nowadays I think mobile phones are hitting a peak. And I still believe folding devices is the future. There's still a lot of work to be done, and the fact that for me, I was more excited about the Samsung Flip Z because they've got folding glass. But again, they're very pricey. Would you want to spend over $1,000 or £1,000 for a phone? I think the prices of this is getting out of hand. I think it's crazy. I know that people are going to pick it up just for the coolness factor, but I don't know, a part of it is a bit weird. The one thing that I did like was with the flip phone, you were able to set a phone up and take a video call. And I thought that was cool. But Samsung talked about their partnership with Microsoft for gaming, for example, which was cool. And they talk about their partnership with Google, and they talk about using Google Duo as a mobile video calling app. But, Duo is something that you can download on any Android phone and do that. So I personally felt that the Samsung event was underwhelming. The phone is going to be great. There's no question about it. It's going to be powerful. It's going to be quick. The screen is at 120 hertz, so it feels super slick and super smooth as you go through the menus. But does it give you more than the S10? Does it give you more than any other phone? I think there needs to be some true innovation now. I think they need to push it even further now. And that's not quite happening yet. Again, I still want to see a world where it's just one OS on a phone, on a tablet, on a laptop. I want it to be a case where it's just a device that does it all, and you don't need to worry about different ecosystems and etc. And that's a long while to go. But the Samsung event, you can watch it online. But overall, and it's just a quick summary, it is about their camera. Their camera takes in more detail. You can film 8K videos. But how appealing would that be? Is it enough to pay that much amount of money? I'm going to turn around and say no, not at this moment of time. I think the big thing that Samsung were really touting was all of their phones will be 5G enabled. But 5G isn't everywhere yet. So I think we're jumping the gun a bit too soon. I think it's too soon to invest. I'm on a 5G. I'm on a folding device. The folding device is the future. It will be the way forward. 5G will be quick, but it's not everywhere yet. We're still not there yet. There's still a lot of work to be done. Microsoft. Well, they've done a U-turn. So I don't know if you remember, in my podcast, I said that they were going to force customers to use Bing and Chrome and implement Bing anywhere. I did say that people would voice up and say no. That is exactly what has happened, and Microsoft have done a U-turn. So now Microsoft will not force Office 365 business customers to use Bing now. So great to see that they're not forcing that. I personally thought it was wrong for Microsoft to do that in the first place, to undo a choice that a user has made. They're not going ahead with that. So some good news in that one. So if you were worried about that, you don't need to worry about that anymore. Now, the US, China spat, Huawei. The US are now making claims that Huawei can secretly access carriers' backdoor access. So they have backdoor access to, let's say, T-Mobile or EE or Vodafone, etc. Obviously, Huawei are now rejecting those claims. They're saying this is not true, that this is a personal attack on the company and vice versa. It is getting a bit messy. And I overall feel as though that Huawei's image is being tarnished bit by bit by bit, and to have major organizations like Vodafone move away from their products, I think that's a big deal. And I think overall an image does count quite a lot. So, when the US is now saying, hey, they've got backdoors to our system, or if other companies are saying, oh, they got backdoors to our routers, etc., it doesn't look great. And I think Huawei will need to go that extra mile to build that trust and to say, look, we build the best infrastructure in the world. We're not doing anything. And I feel they're kind of falling short on giving that kind of reassurance in that case. But they are trying to fight hard. But very interesting to see this spat keep on happening. Now, to talk from the US, we're now talking about the UK. And the UK government now wants the telecom regulator to police social media companies in terms of what is happening, to assume that it's safe, to expand its responsibility to make sure that the content's good, to make sure nothing's bad's going on. They'll be looking at Facebook, they'll be looking at YouTube, Twitter, TikTok is another one that they will be looking into. And I think that call is going to go even further because over this past weekend, we've had a UK celebrity take their own life, unfortunately. And the amount of trolling, the amount of abuse that this individual got over Twitter, for example, and things like that really needs to be culled. And it needs to be controlled. You have... And I've said this in one of my previous podcasts about the dangers of this for children, where, children rely on likes and, children getting bullied on social media and people can't see it. It's not something that you see physically. It happens online. People see it on their phones and their computers, on their tablets. And to bring that kind of control to ensure that stops, it's definitely a welcome surprise. For me, I didn't think that the government would have put a telecom regulator in charge of that. It's very interesting that they have chosen Ofcom to do that, but it's definitely welcomed. So, and hopefully there will be more of a push to ensure that happens. So let's see what happens on that front there. Talking about Nintendo earlier on, Nintendo are going to bring more classic games to the Switch Online. So if you subscribe to the Nintendo Switch Online platform, you'll be aware that you can play, NES games, SNES games, games of old games. And the games that they're going to put on this month will be Shadow of the Ninja. There will be like Tennis Smash Out game. There's going to be, other games that I haven't really heard of, but, they're old classical games. So I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to give it a bash on my Switch. But if you're a fan of classical gaming, there are more games being released on that. And they always do that every month. Now, big news. Oil giant BP are looking and are making plans to be carbon neutral by 2050. Now, this is BP that we're talking about, and they're saying they want to be carbon neutral. This overall means that they will need to look fundamentally at what the organization does and step away from its main business to meet this particular goal. An oil giant company has made an announcement that they're going to be carbon neutral by 2050. That is going to be really, really interesting to see how a company like this is going to do that, how they're going to be carbon neutral, because these are the kind of companies that help create the carbon in such a high effect. So I'm really interested to see how that's going to work out. So let's see what happens in that space. That for me is huge news. Jumping back and forth from gaming news, if you're a fan of Need for Speed, you know that the game hasn't done that well. It hasn't been great. The studio Ghost Games have made the game overall for the past few years. It's been a bit of a letdown. However, I don't know if any of you remember Burnout, which I thought was a great game. The company was called Criterion. Criterion made a decent Need for Speed game, and then they stepped away from it. And I think Criterion are part of the team that make the Madden games. Basically, there's been an announcement that Criterion are going to be coming back into the racing game industry, into that scene, and they will be making the next Need for Speed game. Now, that franchise to me is nearly on its deathbed because they haven't delivered a decent Need for Speed game for a long time. It used to be up there. It really used to be up there. And to have a company like Criterion to come back to create a decent racing game will be amazing. Now, WhatsApp has announced news that it has over 2 billion users worldwide. And it's using this milestone to now advocate against efforts to limit encryption. It is a massive milestone that 2 billion people are using WhatsApp worldwide. This makes it easily the most used messaging service in the world. I no longer use WhatsApp. I just wasn't really a fan of it. And the reason why I stepped back was the news of Facebook looking to merge WhatsApp with their Messenger app. That isn't happening anymore. They're going to keep it separate, which is, welcoming to see. And they're definitely going to make a lot of hard work is going to be put in to ensure that information is secure and safe. So let's see what happens in that way. But, WhatsApp is here to stay for a very, very long while. Now, Sony, as an organization, has made a really, really interesting new remote control. I have a Sony TV and I'm really looking forward to it. And basically what it is, it's a remote control that has buttons on the top, but it also works as a Bluetooth speaker that you can use as a speaker, which you can carry around with you. No longer are you going to lose your remote controls. It's an interesting design that you're going to mix in a remote control with a portable speaker. So Sony are going to release that. I'm not too sure when it's going to be released. They're saying that it might be out on the 22nd of February in Japan. Really interesting tech, so interesting to see that. Now, the big news. Mobile World Congress has always been an event that has been touted for a lot of mobile phone companies to show off their latest tech, new phones. Samsung would do it. Obviously, they've had their event already. Sony would be there. Nokia would be there. But because of the coronavirus, the entire event has been cancelled. It is not going to be going ahead. And with this in mind, it's going to be interesting to see what other events is going to go through this phase. Are we going to see more events that will go to that host different things? It could be an IT event, it could be a cooking event, it could be anything. Are we going to see a lot more things be cancelled? It's really sad to see that happen. A lot of companies are going to make their announcements over their own website or YouTube. So if you were a fan of looking at Mobile World Congress, if you were a fan of looking at new mobile phone technologies, you'll have to then now go to YouTube or look at the manufacturer's website to find out what's being released. I will do my best in my podcast to keep you all up to date in terms of new mobile phone devices that are being announced, etc. So please do listen to the podcast. But really sad news to see that event. But at the end of the day, it is for the safety of everybody to ensure that, this coronavirus doesn't spread even further. So, a bit of a double-edged sword. Sad to see it happen, but it's the right thing for it not to go ahead. Now, Microsoft Project xCloud is now on iOS. Yes, you can have the Xbox streaming service now on an iPhone. The preview is limited to 10,000 people. I was fortunate enough to be on it. And the only game that I can play on their streaming is the Halo Master Chief Collection. I would love to see more games on there, but it will come out over time. I am looking forward to have a go, but Microsoft they're not focusing on doing 4K. They're not focusing on, I'm going to give you 4K streaming or I'm going to do this. They're focusing on a mobile phone screen and giving you the stream quality that you would expect to have on a mobile phone screen. And to be honest, if you're playing at 720p versus 4K on a small screen, you're not going to tell the difference. So it's an interesting move that they're doing. I'm going to play more of it. I haven't had a chance to play with it properly, but I will definitely give it a bash tonight. So I'm really interested to do that. E3, the big gaming event, registrations are opening. They've opened yesterday for registration for organizations to obviously show off their new Xbox or show off their new console or show off new video games. But again, there's going to be questions about it if it will go ahead in terms of what's been going on. and Sony will not be there either. So a bit of an interesting one. I think E3, I would love to see it do more, but let's see what happens in that space. Android has some good news if you're an Android user, or if you're looking to move to Android and you're worried about apps asking for, call data, text data, other data. Google's attempt to curb permission is working. Android has seen a 98% drop in applications that are asking for locations and call data and text data. That is great news. It gives confidence for end users to download apps to know that their information isn't compromised in any way. So that's a massive, massive win for Google, a massive win for Android. I know that there are more people moving to go to the Android platform because they do find that getting Apple devices or these Samsung devices are getting very, very expensive. And it is a pricey affair, so let's see what happens. Now, Facebook were supposed to be launching their dating app in Europe on Valentine's Day. That has been cancelled. That hasn't gone ahead purely because Facebook didn't hand over the documentation that it was supposed to for the application to be launched within Europe. So they had to withdraw the plan of the rollout of Facebook dating. We don't know what the new dates are going to be on that. They're saying that it's going to be early 2020. But really interesting, like I said, that Facebook will be coming into the dating space. Will it be quite popular? Quite interesting. Uber, the taxi hailing app, are taking a step. They're taking a step backwards. And what do I mean by backwards? You can now hail an Uber cab via a phone call. So if you don't have access to data, or if you don't want to book via a phone app, you can now call Uber for a taxi. And personally, that's no different from ordering any other taxi. But they're doing that. They're piloting this in Arizona, I think, where you would order a car by dialing 1-833-USE Uber. So if you're in Arizona, you just need to dial 1-833-USE Uber, and you can then call an Uber via your phone. The operator will take your details, will give you price estimates, and order the car for you. So really interesting to see that happening. We're going back to the old way of hailing cabs, so really interesting to see that. Xiaomi, in response to the Samsung event, are releasing a new phone with a beefy camera. Again, like I said earlier on, it's all about mobile phones getting better camera tech, so really interesting to see. It's not interesting, this was bound to happen. We're going to see more phones bringing more cameras and so forth. The news about Microsoft winning the contract to handle all of the Pentagon's IT system. The judge has granted Amazon's request to put Microsoft's Pentagon contract on hold. Let's see what happens there. This is a straight-on fight between Microsoft and Amazon. But I think the fight with Amazon isn't with Microsoft. It is with Donald Trump, because there's been known issues between Donald Trump and with Jeff Bezos in terms of them not getting along. It's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Will anything turn around? Will Microsoft still have that contract? We will have to wait and see. For all the Half-Life game fans, and I was talking about Half-Life Alyx, the VR game, it is going to be released on March the 23rd. So keep your eye out for that. If you got a VR headset and you're looking forward to playing the new Half-Life game, it's out soon. Now, for you all who do not know about how the PlayStation came about, Nintendo and Sony were working on a collaboration of a new console. It looked like the SNES that took CDs, and basically there was a prototype of the Nintendo PlayStation. That's what we're going to call it. The prototype is being sold. There's about 19 or 18 days to go. And there have been bids of over $200,000 for this console. It is a one-off. It is a one-off piece that you're going to see a Nintendo and Sony console merged into one. That is what gave birth to the PlayStation, because that deal went under, and then Sony went off to finish off their PlayStation. Nintendo went off to work on the N64. and this is what we've got. So very interesting there. Talking about Sony, there are reports of Sony making a new PlayStation virtual reality headset. So they are still in it, despite the fact that they've closed a company in the UK to make VR games. They're still pushing ahead with the VR tech. So that is happening. So VR is no way going to die for a long time. Hobby is a new application released by Facebook that's going to work just like Pinterest. So let's see how that's going to work. Will people gravitate to it? Is Pinterest still popular? Do you all still use Pinterest? Or would you like something new? You know, they're calling it the one-stop app for your personal shopping projects. Hobby is going to be really interesting to see what happens. So it's out now on the Apple Store. Feel free to download it now. But Facebook are definitely trying to come into that space. Now, if you're in the US and you are a Pandora Apple Watch user, I'm not too sure if Pandora is in Canada, so please do correct me if I'm wrong there. But Pandora Apple Watch app will soon stream music without having an iPhone near you. So as long as your Apple Watch has Wi-Fi or has cellular data, you can now stream music from Pandora to your watch, to your wireless earphones, just like that. So that will definitely be a welcome surprise, 100%. So, cool to see. Today, Nike has released some new self-lacing basketball shoes for $400. They're saying it's going to be easier to put on. It's going to be a lot more comfortable. Self-lacing shoes are here. I'm telling you, it's going to take a little bit more time for that to happen, but it will be amazing to see that happen. Tesla Model S, they've now, as well as the Model X, have now got a range boost to their cars. So these cars will go closer. The Model S range is edging closer to that 400 miles that I was mentioning on my last podcast. So these electrical cars are definitely going a long way. It's going to be definitely a welcome surprise for sure. And then I'm going to close this podcast off with one last news about a ultrasonic bracelet that jams the microphones around you. So you put on this bracelet around your arm, and devices like the Amazon Echo, devices like Siri, will be unable to listen to you because this device that you have around your wrist will jam microphones. It's crazy tech. So it will stop eavesdroppers, etc., etc. I don't know how many people. I imagine a lot of people picking that up because I do speak to a lot of people that don't like the idea of these smart speakers listening to items, etc. So, let's see what happens there. But that's what I'm going to end it on. I hope you've enjoyed this week's podcast. And if you've got any feedback, if you'd like to hear something, if you want to hear about a particular topic, please do reach out to me. The email is podcast@vibes, vibez.xyz. Just email me, or XYZ I should say in the UK, but just email me. I'm more than happy to talk about items that interest you. And I will start putting in some special topics. And I still need to do one or two things. I will definitely get that done. But thank you very much. Have a lovely week ahead of you. I'm sure there'll be another interesting of news coming in the tech, and I will keep you all posted. So thank you once again. Thank you for all of your love, and I shall chat to you all soon. Bye.